Welcome everyone to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst radio network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Find them at ArtistFirst.com. We welcome your questions and comments. Please use DJ at ArtistFirst.com. And now here they are, the way cool duo, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
That is not true. We are the farthest thing from cool.
Okay.
we're such stiffs. We make stiffs look cool.
All right.
Good morning, everyone.
We're starting this way.
We're starting. Thank you very much, Scott. We are the way cool people, and I am Michael Lyons.
Mm-hmm. And I'm Margaret.
And she's way cooler than me.
Oh, please stop.
It is true. And tonight, we are not going to broadcast from the mountaintops.
Ding. Okay. What is going on?
We are going to broadcast from a secret, undisclosed location.
I see.
No?
We can.
I'm trying to engender a false sense of urgency.
Urgency.
I may have had the wrong thing for dinner. Anyway,
right.
We are going to have a show tonight, aren't we?
Yes.
Oh, good. And we are going to talk about desire.
Okay. Desire.
Desire, because, everybody wants things.
Well, we do want. Everyone that is alive, there is a want of some kind.
And wants come in all shapes and all sizes. And many of the wants that we feel we need are, if you take a moment to examine them and kind of say why, ask yourself, why do I think I need this? You may come to the conclusion, if you're honest with yourself, that you don't really know why that you want this thing.
Why do I want that?
Why do I want that? And it can be something as simple as a particular game or a particular toy or a particular brand of car or something like that. And so a lot of these things that we desire. And they can really be anything. They can be, people say, well, I can't find love. I can't find happiness. I can't find my socks. They can't find what they're really looking for. And of those three, the socks are the least obtainable. Once you've lost one, you might as well just throw out the other one because it's never coming back. But these desires oftentimes are rootless, Margaret. They really don't have. They aren't actually tied to something which is important to your being. They're often sort of been inculcated or really implanted within you by other external societal factors. Why do you want a particular brand of car or wear a particular type of clothing that has a a brand of this or a brand of that on it, or it's promoted by.
You want a certain type of phone. You want
great example. Yep.
Yeah, or a position. At work, you want something more.
A certain degree or a certain amount of money, or these things are they are crowding into your existence, and they're being pushed into your psyche from really all different directions, and oftentimes sort of unknown. We talked last week a little bit about the unconscious and about our friend Carl Jung, and how the unconscious sort of desires or tropisms or unrequited or unknown sources of these kinds of behaviors that come out through people are part of the unconscious makeup of many people's psyches. And people will come out and say, well, I need this, I want it, I desire it, I'll do anything to get it. And if you kind of follow that back down, you say, well, why? What will this do for you? Well, I'll feel better. It'll make my life better. People will think better of me. I'll be, more important or seen as better than. But even that, even when you start to unwrap those things, or even better, Mark, when you actually realize the object of your desires, oftentimes there's a disappointment. You say, well, now I have the thing, and I don't really feel all the things that I thought I would feel. I don't feel happy. I don't feel fulfilled. I don't find myself satisfied, and I'm almost, once I have it, it's almost to be pushed to the side for the next object of my desire, the next thing which I don't have.
Right. You get this feeling of always running after something.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people call that the rat race. But when you think of it, the word desire itself, it implies a lack
mm-hmm.
or a void of something. And we ourselves, a lack or an emptiness is something that we shun. Almost instinctively. You just know that, no, this is not what I need right now. I need to fill that lack or void. And since we're here in body, your first inclination is to believe it, well, it's got to be something. There must be a thing that I can go after that will fill that void or that emptiness. And I believe it's that feeling of emptiness that we are striving against. You just don't want it. When you feel empty like that, it's not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, nature abhors a vacuum. That's the saying. What it means is, in physics or in the physical world, if there's an emptiness, something will come to fill it.
Mm-hmm.
But human beings, and you just said it, human beings also abhor a vacuum. They, if you're hungry, you want to put some food in your belly.
Yeah,
if you're thirsty, you want to put some water in your mouth.
That is the basic experience.
And if somebody's put a desire into you, which is, I think, large numbers of what we consider things that we absolutely have to have, and won't be happy until we do, are desires which have been put into us rather than natural desires. The desire to eat is a very natural, and it's linked to the survival of your being. Your physical, corporeal self needs to eat once in a while. Drink, the same thing. You have physical needs which have to be met in order to keep yourself healthy and to keep yourself alive. And there's other needs. There's basic needs such as shelter. So there's shelter and there's food, water and air. You have a need for a basic level of autonomy. You have a need for a basic level of freedom. And when these things are denied you feel that lack. If you're
mm-hmm.
incarcerated, it's a pain, even if nothing is being done to you physically except keeping you in one spot because you have a need to be free.
Mm-hmm.
But these needs, you can identify that there is a true lack. There's a true source for the need. Your belly's empty. It hurts. It wants food. Your body starts to crave sustenance because it's using energy and it needs to replenish itself. Similarly with water and other basic needs. But then you go one level, let's say higher up, and the need for a particular brand of footwear isn't gonna, we've probably all heard this from our parents. If you don't have the XYZ thing, it's not gonna kill you. Well, it's not, but you may feel as though it will, and the source of that feeling and the ability to kind of leverage that into behavior is a very interesting phenomenon that a lot of people take advantage of within others, advertisers and so on, try to take advantage of that. Because if you can inculcate this desire for something into one or more or many people, all of a sudden if you can fulfill that desire, you're going to be making, mucho bucks, and you meet all your other desires.
Right. If the society at large believes that everybody should have this, they basically, it's a mob mentality.
Mm.
We need to go do this. We need to go get this. And it has no real logical reason for it. It's just, well, this is what we're all doing.
Yeah.
You see that all the time with the trends. They call it trends. And honestly, if you look at the trends, you begin to realize that, well, this is kind of the impulse that the culture or the society wants to push forward on you.
Mm.
But you never stop to ask why. You just know that this is what is being expected of you. Like the Pantone color of the year is coral or something. So everybody's got to wear coral.
Is it?
Some type of coral.
Oh, I'm glad I'm in style. But isn't it funny? It's funny because it's true. The Pantone color of the year or the is the hemlines going up or down. Fashion's a wonderful study for the inculcation of desire.
It's a trend, and what it goes back to is that feeling of emptiness or void, because you feel like you will be excluded from the group if you don't do this. And that is a very basic driver. I mean, the reason you're in a family in general is because you are in this group and you find out what your family ways are, the traditions, the culture, what's expected of you, all part of being in a family. And taking that very basic desire to fulfill this for the good of your family, it gets taken out of true needs and into, well, wouldn't you like to do this or that or the other thing? Just it's fascinating, really, when you're unaware of why you do what you do.
Well, yes. I mean, well, you said it already. Is there's a basic human need to belong to a group, and the basic group, you could say, the basic group is the family or the tribe, if you will. But then that's sort of hijacked and becomes sort of like what people often will refer to as a clique. You have to be part of this group or that group or this trend or that trend. And so, to pick on fashion again for a moment, this is sort of a feedback loop, but it's sort of a weird open feedback loop because what you're feeding back into the group is that you can't be part of the group unless you follow the group. And then the group doesn't really have a leader, if you will, although people do claim to say, well, I'm the fashion trend setter and so on. But it's all very self-referential. The group is, it often will pretend to try and innovate, but many times it's really just reiterate or in essence feed back into itself what it thinks itself will like, and it's sort of an odd sort of mass self hypnosis or a sort of a mass psychosis, if you will. And this isn't, again, I don't want to pick on fashion, but this happens a lot in industries where the guiding principle isn't rooted in anything particular. Survival is a good guiding principle. If you don't do this, you're going to die. You got to eat, you're going to die. Okay, well, that's a good guiding principle. And then you figure out, well, what's good to eat and what will keep me alive. But fashion doesn't have that, isn't necessarily rooted directly in this sort of basic, this gets that kind of survival mechanism. But it is purported to should be writ large. If you want to become part of the in group and the fashion trend, to get onto that trend, you got to learn a lot about what it is. You got to pay your dues. You got to get into the cycle, and then you have to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all that stuff that you're kind of signing up for gives you these sort of what you think are survival benefits. It gives you an identity. Well, I'm part of the XYZ in group, and I know what the next color of the year is going to be, and I can even influence it and say it's not going to be this kind of coral. It's going to be this kind of coral with these kind of stripes, and it gives you an ego boost. And all of these sort of, let's say, secondary or tertiary desires are oftentimes tied to identity. And particularly, and we're talking about our quote here that we'll bring in a minute, but particularly Tolle has oftentimes been asked about these types of desires, and where they fit in to the enlightened persons or to the person who's spiritually seeking, where they fit in. How do I deal with these kind of desires or these kinds of tropisms, if you will, and how can I separate myself from them? Well, you see they're very insidious because they are really tied deeply with identity. They're really tied deeply with ego and with what I think of myself. Even, and this is a kind of an interesting one, even the desire that I will someday become enlightened is in itself, and that seeking for it is in itself an ego trip. It really is.
Right. The understanding that there are different levels or degrees of desire, and you can have a surface level of desire, which is just accumulating certain things. And the fascinating part about it is that, how do I even... There, how there are those that basically say, name it and claim it.
Mm-hmm.
These are the ones that are looking to manifest something in their lives. And as they said, the whole idea is to name what it is, and then you're claiming it into your life. And there are many who have said, or there are those that have said, yes, this works. And actually, if you do research this, there are many people who have all kinds of books out and videos to instruct people on how to do this.
Right. Speak your desire into the universe, and the universe will respond, that kind of thing.
Right. But the point that Tolle had brought up, which reflects back to what Carl Jung had basically said a couple weeks ago with making the unconscious conscious. When you're manifesting in that way and solely on your ego power, all right, it's not your consciousness, your true consciousness is not even involved at all. This is all ego. I want this.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I desire. If you understand that what you're calling in, and it's again going back to the quote that we have put up, you're going to bring or manifest forward what is in your inner state, and completely your inner state, not just what you say that you want. So whatever you have going that is unconscious, that also manifests. In other words, you're manifesting stuff whole, complete, with all the ego drama that it involves.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the state that you are in when you're calling this forward. If you're in fear, then it's a fear-based desire. And all the other fears that are orbiting the fear will also manifest.
A good way to put that is that the universe truly does reflect back what you put into it.
Right.
But what you say you're putting into it, and the difference between that and what your actual inner state, what the inner state of your being is, especially if it's wrapped in layer upon ego, it is where you end up with, well, I want to manifest from the universe a tangerine, and I keep getting cantaloupes with giant warts on them, which is kind of an odd thing. But the point is that your inner state corresponds to warty cantaloupes, not sweet tangerines. No matter how often you say, I wish to have love, your inner pain body, your ego inner pain body will call forth the love which it loves. It loves pain. It loves you to suffer. It brings that forward because it's all there, and the universe sees it all. The being which is you can manifest your inner state, but your inner state is conflicted, ego storm-tossed, and what you speak is not enough. What you are is.
Well, when you realize that the internal power that you're putting out there is flavored
there you go,
by all the other things that are roiling around in your soul. So putting out there this desire to have a certain thing usually comes with all kinds of turmoil, because the inner turmoil that you put out there, even if it's unconsciously, will come back to you. For the universe is a reflector. It will reflect your inner soul. And it's one of the reasons why the Buddhists always say, the people that you're having trouble with or problems with are your greatest teachers. Because that reflection is pointing out where in your soul you need to become much more aware of what is going on. It's like, why is this fear coming up again and again? It's like, okay, instead of running away from the fear, you have to meet it head on with space and with peace to understand what it is and then let it go. Because what is the acronym for fear? False events appearing real.
That's a good one.
Yes. And so when you realize that it's a false event appearing real, you have to let go and say, what is the reality of this? In other words, what is actually happening around me without any kind of opinion being put forward by me? Let me just observe this. And realizing, well, this perspective, I see it all. Oh, okay. That I actually brought that on to myself.
Well, that takes a great deal of introspection. But in fact, what you just said is exactly true. When you can either unconsciously project and manifest things out of the universe, or try to do it consciously. But if you identify something which you desire, and then you do this, and you just said it, the name and claim, or speak your desires into the universe, and the universe will respond. The universe has no happiness filter. It has no, I'm going to look at your ego and know what you really want and know who you really are. No. The universe looks at you as a thing which is, as a being in and of itself. The observer and the observed observe things truly. it does not take into account your ego state, or rather it does, but not in the way you think it is. Your ego state is, well, I know exactly what I want to do, and I know what I'm going to claim from the universe, and I'm going to tell the universe what I want, and this is what I want, and I'm going to specify it directly, and I'm going to write it all down, and I'm going to speak it into the universe, and it's just going to come to me. Well, okay. But the universe is looking at all that and saying, okay, pain body, unrequited desires, got all these things, all these problems, all these issues, all the internal fears. So we have to, all that gets reflected back to you. And you hear people very over and over again saying, why do it? Every time I ask for something, I always get this. I always get turmoil. I always get fear. I always get, well, first of all, that whole cycle of pain body and ego identification and what I get when I ask for things is all part of what's being projected out into the universe. And yes, the ego, the pain body, just wants to have itself come back to itself. It wants attention. It wants to take over identity. It literally loves to have these things come back to it, because then it can complain. See, I was right. I told you it would go this way. This is the way it always goes for me. Every time I ask for this, I get that. Every time it's this person's fault and that one's fault, and I can't do it. And only if only this would happen, and if only that would. It goes on and on. It's just like drinking in the attention. Yes, I'm getting exactly what I want from the universe. It's giving me everything. It's making me. It's miserable. And I love it.
It's justifying what I said was going to happen.
Exactly.
You see it happen.
You see it happened.
And it's a very unhappy state.
But the ego loves it.
Well, the ego can only exist if it has the drama to do it.
And so all of this is what goes out and what comes back. And, in Tully's quote, we didn't really talk about it, but in Tully's quote, he says, he answers this question in exactly that way. Well, how do you deal with this idea of being able to manifest from the universe? How Eckhart, can we manifest what we want? We want peace, we want love, we want eternal, happiness for all. I want my being to become conscious. And we could read the quote, but he basically answers that by saying, you attract and manifest whatever corresponds to your inner state. And he's also been asked, in other contexts, what do I do with my desires? And what you can do with your desires is realize that all desire reflects what you said earlier, Margaret. It all reflects an ego lack, an egoic need for something. And that egoic need for something is really just another way for the ego to acquire a different form of suffering. I don't have what I want. I want it and I can't get it. Every time I go to get it, it doesn't come. And people are always standing in my way. And, if only this would happen. If only that would happen. I only had $1 million. If only I had this, then everything would be happy. But it never happens. And it's always never within my reach. And I'm always striving for it. Well, this is the litany that the ego loves to play over and over again. I'm the victim. I can't get what I need. If only I could get this. It's always in the future. And if only this things hadn't happened 10 years ago, then I could be where I want to be now, but I can't be there and I have to get there, and it's going to take time, and I've got to try really hard and get enlightened and study and think about all the things and tell my ego that it doesn't belong. And
well, that's right.
It just goes on and on.
The whining,
the kvetching.
Well, it's just when we all have either experienced this or know people who just go right into this, it doesn't help in any way, shape, or form. It literally is whining, hoping that something else will manifest itself. And that's what I find fascinating, especially if you're into believing in that you're going to be bringing in stuff for your life. You must take responsibility for it. And if you don't take responsibility for it and you wind up complaining, which is, frankly, complaining about your situation means you're not taking responsibility for it.
Mm-hmm.
You're hoping and waiting for someone or something else to rectify the situation, to make it right. And that's not what your life is.
Mm.
Your life is being able to take steps in a chosen direction, but it's got to be you choosing, not everything else choosing. When everything else chooses the pathway for you, and it's always completely random, there will not be happiness for you.
Mm. Well, and in fact, what appears to be this constant sort of randomness comes from two different places. The universe itself is a random place. Things happen to people. Things happen to everyone. The instant reaction of the ego is, why me? Or why couldn't it be this way? Or if I'd only had this, or if I only had that. And then within the ego itself, within all these egoic needs and wants and desires, is this cultivation, Margaret said earlier, cultivation of lack. I'm always wanting this. I never have enough that. If only this could happen, then I could be happy and fulfilled. People talk about bucket lists. They talk about what they don't have all of the time. The reflection of that, the other side of that, is people say, well, okay, you have to speak your desires into the universe. But in this egoic way, all you're really doing is listing to the universe as though it was some sort of gumball machine that you just stick a quarter in and you get out a gumball. They say, well, here's my desire. I have put it out into the universe. Now I just sit here in lotus position and wait for it to fall into my lap. What falls into your lap is what the universe's reflection of your egoic desire was, and its pain body, its suffering. And people say that. No matter what I ask for, I always get the wrong thing. I always get the thing I'm not looking for. I always get something which doesn't fulfill me, which then has to go to the next thing. Okay. All of that, desiring things, putting things into the universe, even the desire to become enlightened, to find ways to root, even if you wake up a little bit and say, well, I've got to get rid of my ego, I can't do it, I have to do it, I'm going to do it, it's going to happen. These are all still in their egoic traps, just saying to yourself, if only someday I will be enlightened, someday I have to work many, many years, I'm going to have to study 1,000 books, I'm going to have to read all the things and listen to every lecture, and eventually, someday, I will get to the enlightened point, but it's not today, and I'm still trying and trying. All of this is still calling into you lack. It's still identifying, well, I'm not enlightened yet. So when will I be enlightened? And how much more do I have to do? Is it going to be 2 more years or 5 more years or 1,000 more books or whatever it is? How many more lectures do I have to? The simplest way to cut all of that is to realize that no desire stated with the egoic mind is going to fulfill you, whether you acquire it or whether you're just desiring it. All of it has to be brought back to presence. And the presence of the moment of now is to realize very completely that everything in the moment of now is exactly what you desire. You're exactly where you're supposed to be at this particular moment in time. And you lack nothing because there is no lack now. There's never a lack now. Now you are a complete being. Now you are present in yourself. Does that mean you don't have to eat anymore? No, you do. Does it mean that you might want to go and get yourself a nice dinner and sit down with friends and have a little talk? No, all that's fine. But the sitting in the moment of now and saying, I'm not happy because I'm not eating, or I'm not happy because I'm not with my friends, or I'm not happy because I'm not enlightened yet, is egoically saying, I have a lack. I am lack. I am empty. I am void. It's all ego. I am. I aming.
Well, you are identifying with that emptiness, and your identity is not emptiness. And you know that intuitively. You know that in the depths of your soul. You're not void. So it begins to look around going, well, okay, I'm getting void. I'm getting emptiness as a reflection, but that's not who I am. Maybe the best way to kind of describe this is to understand that every individual wants to bring something forth. You want to create in this world. You want to bring something, whether it's, say, cooking a meal or writing a book, painting, or a piece of music. When you're in that act of creation, there is no want. And that's the thing that most people don't seem to understand. If you wish not to be filled with want, you must create and engage in the act of creation, because all of you participates in it. And in creation, there is no lack. You just open up and you begin and you interact and you dream, you listen. There are flows, creative flows coming out of you that you participate in. When you understand that you desire to do this, your deepest desire is to really participate in creating. And in that act itself, as I said before, there is no lack, which means you're full. There is a fullness of being in the act of creation. And frankly, you can't do it wrong. The piece that you are creating just comes out of you. There's a wholeness to it. And many times there's a life to it of its own. And doing that is an amazing thing, because you're actually manifesting without any ego drama. And it's an amazing thing.
Well, go ahead, sorry.
Because in that act of creation, what you're actually doing is giving of yourself. It's an energy that gives out to the world. It's not an energy that is trying to fill the void by accumulating stuff and shoving it into that empty hole that you have in the middle of your chest. This is actually, you're already full. And the desire to create means that you have a great desire to give to the world. It's an amazing thing.
I have to unpack that, because there's so much in there. I would like to draw one fine distinction. Wanting to create is an ego desire. I want to be a great creator is an egoic desire. But fulfilling yourself via the act of creation has no egoic component, because you have to realize what it is that you wish to create within yourself, within your being, in a channeling of source, and then use that internal power to influence the external world. And the act of creation is a timeless moment. We talked about that in a couple, 3 episodes ago. But the other interesting thing I think I want to unpack there is that creation in and of itself is a being state, a state of being, present, and acting. But if you recall the creation story, which is a lovely story where the world is created figuratively in 6 days, and on the seventh day God rests. Resting is a present state within creation, which is also a creative, timeless state. So you can rest completely in present being without doing anything, in communion with Source as an emanation of Source, and be fulfilled in creation and in looking at what you have created, in appreciating it in being. So both the act of creating, the desire to create, but in the sense of not saying, I want to create something, saying, well, within me I have the innate desire to create, to be part of creation in action, to be part of creation in being, and to be part of creation in rest, in the sense that you rest in appreciation of the moment of now, in taking in the moment of now, in having created, if you will. So this is very profound, I think, that what you've struck upon here, is that the basic desire, all these egoic layers on top of the basic desire is to be a being in and within and of creation. Layering on top of all those things are these artificial egoic lacks. You don't have this, you don't have that, you can't do this, you can't do that, you need this, you need that. Those all are voids which the ego never wants to fill. Because if you notice, every time you get the thing the ego says is the thing that you desire most, I finally have the perfect coral shoes, suddenly they're out of style. Suddenly they're no good anymore. Suddenly they don't fulfill you. I've gone through all my bucket list. I've gotten everything checked off. And I still feel empty. Well, because those weren't acts of creative manifestation from your being into the physical. They aren't acts of rest in which you appreciate the moment of now. They're just egoic cycles filled with lack and lack upon lack. And the pain body which kind of fills that all in and gets more lack. And as Margaret says, is always continually looking to drag things in and accumulate them and never fill the void, because the things that you drag in have no substance. They're really just form. They don't have true being to them. They don't have any life.
Yes. With the experience of life here, it's just layers. And wanting to be conscious and present means that there is a great understanding of your own being, how you think about things, your mindset. Is it narrowed where you're basically trying to grasp at things and pull them in? Because a lot of that manifestation thinking is reaching out and grasping it and pulling it into your life. But at its root, it's want. It's using that emptiness as your foundation. When you come to the point of being able to live and appreciate the life that is around you, and it's not by your effort, I might remind you. You're living, your heart is beating, you're breathing, and it's not a conscious effort on your part. When you understand that, you understand that you are here experiencing the body, the heartbeat, the breath, the pressure of the air around you, the temperature, fragrances, present in this moment, and just looking around, realizing, well, this is a reflection of being. It's not a reflection of me wanting to grasp something in. I want to have this incredible experience. It's like, as you were saying before, And Tolle had always said that. I want to be fulfilled. I want to be enlightened. That's my desire. I wish to achieve enlightenment for the good of the planet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's a noble...
very noble. Yes.
It's a very noble thought. But to understand that to participate in that means you must let go of what you think you are. You're not a being that's striving to achieve enlightenment. In the Buddhist tradition, if you really are doing that, the master will give you a smack. Because there is no desire that way. The I has to be taken out completely. And you have to be empty of your desire. And it has to do with a non-attachment. All the teachings there are trying to show you must let go of the grasping of what you think as well as what you may possess. And the thinking part is the hardest part because these are habit forms. Mindsets are habit forms that get set up inside of you. And until you stop and ask yourself, why do I want that? Or why am I doing that? Or why do I have that reaction? To get down to the root cause of it, you're just playing on the surface of it all. And you haven't gone in deeply to experience the life and the incredible, the life and the love that surrounds you and sustains you. Being is an amazing gift. And we have a tendency to denigrate it because you think, oh, well, that's just basic. That's just, I can do that at any time. It's like, no, you can't.
And that statement is a wonderful one. The ego always says that, well, I can get enlightened anytime. I gotta go. We gotta go down into town and go for a trip in Vegas and run around and play and do all the things that will really fulfill us. We can't just sit here.
The sentiment is life is short. I'm just going to go out and do everything that I want to do.
Well, do it all first, and then I can become enlightened.
Well, the truth of the matter is, if that's what you've got to do first, then get through it. But you will come to the end of yourself. You will come to the end of yourself. Because these acts that you believe you need to do not fulfill.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, if you look at a person's life, the average person's life, there is a point at which they come to the end of themselves. And we've talked about that many times in the past. But this endless lack, this endless desire can be a form of suffering that brings you to enlightenment. You may suddenly realize that no matter what I do, I'm never filled. So let me stop this endless cycle of desire. Maybe I just don't have to need things. This is a way that you can come to a more enlightened state. You literally say, well, look at Thoreau. We talked about Thoreau a couple times lately, but what he basically did was he went off, isolated himself, and there are many people who do this. There are hermitages all throughout the Middle East. There is a tradition of separating oneself from the world. You mentioned the Buddhists; they do that. Doing that and saying to the body and saying to the ego, none of what you think you need is important. It does not fulfill. It does not give us what we actually need. We need some basics. The Buddhists have their begging bowl. You have your tiny degree of spices. You have enough stuff that you can keep body and soul together, but you don't find fulfillment there. It's sustenance. It's necessary, but the true this endless sort of cycle of desire and this endless sort of cycle of lack and endlessly seeking for the next thing to fill me, and it never seems to fill me, and so I'm always endlessly seeking, this can bring you to the end of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way. There are so many ways in which you can confront, in essence, suffering, the suffering of endless lack, the suffering of the body, the suffering of many things, that Margaret just said it, that will finally bring you, the end of your life, and you've done everything and you're still not fulfilled. It finally bring you to the point where you're like the end of your ego. You've exhausted it. You've done it all. The ego has run itself dry. And you can finally peek out from underneath all this shredded husk of ego and say, I didn't ever need any of that stuff. It's not the important things. When you have great suffering come into your life and you realize that the moment of now is all you ever had, that no matter what, suffering cannot take it away from you, that all the desire in the world and the endless non-fulfillment and the endless running on the rat race, running on the treadmill, you say, well, it's never getting me anywhere. Maybe I'm right where I need to be. These hints, through either running yourself ragged through the rat race and finally running yourself to the end of your life and all the bucket lists, or through great suffering perhaps, these hints bring you back to the place that we've been talking about, this internal, this moment of creation, this being which can participate, which is a reflection of Source Creator, which is an emanation of Source, which is Source in one regard. It's the individual emanation of a piece of Source in the moment of creation, which is the exact moment of now, always. The universe is always in the moment of creation. It's never stopping. It's never done. And you have those two states, creating and resting, being and doing, but doing in the creative state of doing without expectation, doing without desire, doing without lack, bringing something into being, giving it life, passing it on into creation, making an eternal moment.
Yeah. Giving.
Giving.
It's truly giving. And that's what you were made for. Maybe that's the other thing that people overlook, is that you were made to give out, to engage. It's one of the main reasons why people want to be part of a group. They want to participate and give what they can. And it's unusual to find a group that is willing just to take you as you are, and it doesn't matter. And the minute there's certain requirements, that's when you have to be aware of what it is you're participating in. Most people don't realize that every generation, they have a certain set of rules or expectations for every generation. And it's reflected in, like, when you're seeing kids in a high school. They begin all to dress a certain way. And though they say you have to be you have to be an individual, a lot of them won't go past certain boundaries. It's like, everybody's wearing pajamas to school today, so I should be wearing pajamas. It's just my pajamas are pink or plaid or ducks on them or something, and you realize that they are trying to make a statement that we belong, but I belong this way or that way. It's like, well, your whole generation you're defined by pajama pants and sweatshirts. It's just fascinating. It's fascinating.
What you just said right before that, you're right, of course, that these group identities and these become sort of like the zeitgeist. But what you said right before that is truly what we're looking for, and you'll find the most precious relationship you have is to find another being who accepts you for who you are. And who you are is important because your definition can be very egoic. But if you get closer and closer. The closest relationships are relationships in which you do not have to put on a face.
Right.
You don't have to have desires. You don't have to endlessly be seeking for the relationship to be. The relationship just is. And when you find the other who sees you as completely and honestly as you are, sees you as you are, that's an instant relationship bond. I can be myself with you is how people describe their closest relationships. I don't have to put on a face. I don't have to have a particular color on or do only say certain things, because I can't say everything. I can't be myself. I have to be what you want me to be.
Right.
You know?
Which is interesting, because that problem has made itself manifest in the social medias that we are using. There's always a group that's got to have a certain type of face that you all have to agree on in order to participate in it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you realize that manifestation is an ego manifestation, and it brings all the drama that an ego will bring. It's a perfect representation of understanding what your desire is actually bringing about, because each Facebook page is constructed by an individual, and their desire is expressed there, but the manifesting of the page itself is a representation of all the unconscious ego drama that you carry within you.
Right. And then a true relationship, when suffering strips away everything except who you are, and then there are those who will be taken away. You'll never see them again. They were only there because of who they thought you were, or who you were representing yourself to be. These are not your friends. These are not your relations. They're just acquaintances. When suffering strips you down to who you actually are, the ones who stay, the people who actually are willing to be with you, who understand that you are the being, not your external reference, not your clothing, not how much money you have or what you look like or whether you're handsome or tall or whatever. All that stuff gets stripped away and you get down to your absolute essence. Those relationships of being to being are the most precious and the most real. And they are not about desire. They're about who you actually are. They're about you and them, the other and yourself in relationship. People put a lot of desires on relationships too, as you just mentioned. All these different, but all that egoic, what I want, who's going to fulfill me, whether they're blonde or brunette or whatever. No. Truly, the person that you attract to yourself and that stays with you through everything, from the beginning to the end, through suffering, through rich or poor or better, the whole marriage vow, if you will, is the essence of true relationship, the essence of true being, the essence of truly being who you are.
Right. And
we've reached that being point where we have to give up the show.
Well, we've reached the end of our hour.
We have reached the end of our hour.
So, I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
And thank you for listening.